Uh, Good evening. I actually wanted to continue the conversation I had with my last video in regards to what mindset could have been a possibility for the Germans in not accepting the Ukrainians into the Wehrmacht or the SS or whatever. Um, I thought about it a little. I mean, there's plenty of other topics to talk about, and I'll get to those in future videos. But there are two other possibilities. Um, the Germans most certainly would have had um, medical professionals brought with them. Rosenberg, the theoretician for Nazi racism, accompanied Goring to the Ukraine. I don't know if at the same time, but that was it. And so the medical intellectuals were definitely observing the Ukrainian people. I firmly believe that, although it's not specifically said anywhere where I found. And they would have done so to conduct tests. And a lot of Nazi scientific tests were grotesque in nature. However, there's a lot that can be learned through more subtle means, and they knew that even back then. A concept that is lost in translation when it comes to Western history books, and more than likely the Eastern Communist Bloc. They seem to change history, which sounds more according to them. Science doesn't necessarily have to be a brutal thing. There are a lot of benign, passive, quiet ways of conducting science. However, that's not very good at depicting the Germans as monsters if they actually did scientific, analysis that was at least benign. And what I mean by all that is they would have been checking out the intelligence of the Ukrainian potential military class. And the fact that the Soviets were a very tight lipped, no information was allowed to go anywhere. Anyone suspecting of creating fake information or basically saying anything that the Commissar, the Communist Party, didn't like, ended up in a gulag, so most people didn't talk about anything at all. It was a very work-orientated society where perhaps you lived on a farm and you worked the land, which is not easy. And in a way, especially in German Nazi society, if you're unable to speak properly or, string more than a few sentences together, you kind of look stupid. So you may know everything about growing potatoes and cabbages, but in the eyes of Nazi theoreticians, you look like quite the dumbass. And, I look at today's society and the suppression of information. Well, there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of stupid, pointless facts that are out there that don't accomplish anything by knowing. And, with YouTube trying to bring in other content and this sort of stuff, you can learn stuff that's a little higher up the tier as far as quality goes, but you're not actually going to be able to really better yourself because of it. And all those self-help ones, they make you run around. They're not very good at all, actually, because there's little lies here and there. Okay, so anyway, now that all aside, I was going to say that these Nazi scientists probably gauged the Ukrainian people as being very stupid. Whether they were justified in that or not, I'm not here to say. However, Goring referred to the Ukrainian people as being useless. And does that denote that he was trying to find use for them? In the end, he had a very brutal policy for the Ukrainians. And I guess that was the only use he had for them. Because perhaps they failed tests. The Germans were not very good at speaking Ukrainian, and the Ukrainians were not very good at speaking German. So it was quite obvious that there was communication problems. It is quite often referred to that the Germans were welcomed when they first arrived because they kicked the Nazis out and they didn't know who the Germans were. But, after a few months of them, obviously taking whatever's left of their food, the lion's share of it, their resources and things like that, their patience might have started to wear off, especially for the men who watched the women, galvanize these German foreign soldiers in their country, and began to resent that. Because the German men in Ukraine, the Ukrainian years, were getting a lot of action because they were seen as the heroes, where their stumble-bum Ukrainian boyfriends weren't getting anything done. That is a distinct possibility. And I believe they would have given them training sessions to see if they were fit for military service. And I guess evidently they didn't do so well because they were not chosen for that specific task. And, there's going to be some people who are going to go, well, I haven't read that in any book. I never even thought of the subject before. What made you start thinking about it? Did you start imagining yourself as a German commander in World War II? To the answer, I say, no, never. Smeagol hates nasty elf bread. Yeah, no, that's not why I thought of that. It's because I've been studying the subject for quite a while, and, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I feel as though these questions are not even brought up on any kind of real platform. Other than the really serious ones where they don't invite just anybody. This is just one tiny little aspect of the war. Is why did Goring say no to Ukrainian reinforcements? Why did he say no? They had enough Mausers. Could have given them a weapon and put them on some high-risk mission. Could have done that, I suppose, but they didn't. And, it's not like I'm in support one way or the other. History is history. And, a lot of stuff happened. A lot of important things. And, they reflect upon what the world looks like today. So it's important to know this stuff. Or at least think about it anyway. Yeah, so those were all possibilities. Also the regular cuisine of the Ukrainians, aside from bread, of course, which the Russians took most of. What was their cuisine like? What did the Germans think of it at the time? Because it's really petty. But a German commander could easily, have had dinner there in some Ukrainian high esteemed place. And he didn't think much of their food. A lot of people really thought food was the most important thing in the world at that time, for whatever reason. This was World War II. I don't know why. And if you had bad food in the sense that you prepared it in a strange way, and they were the overlords, the Germans, didn't like it, they held petty reasons that they would not like a particular country for silly reasons like that. That would never be a singular reason, but you know, it could have been a combination. Well, most certainly was a combination of reasons, and that may have, you know, been the cherry on the cake, because German high command were known for having little patience with people they didn't like. So anyway, those are some ideas I figured I'd throw out there. Put a joke in the middle if you recognize it or not. Do I need a laugh track? Tell me if I do, because I don't want one. Uh, yeah. So I think that will be a wrap for this particular video, and I will talk to you guys next time. Have a good one.